Hi everyone, so today we're going to be talking about properties of parallelograms, and parallelograms are kind of like smashed rectangles. They're smashed rectangles because rectangles always have right angles, and parallelograms sometimes have right angles, but sometimes they don't. So let's just go over some of the stuff that we need to know about parallelograms first, and then we'll go over the examples. So on parallelograms, the things that you want to know is that because it's a smashed rectangle, then the opposite angles are equal to each other. So angle A is equal to angle C, and then angle D is equal to angle B. So if I know angle A is 100 degrees, then angle C is also 100 degrees. If I know angle D is 50 degrees, then I know angle B is also 50 degrees. The other thing to know about the angles is that if we know that they're not equal to each other, like for example angles A and B, then they have to add up to 150 degrees. Or not, I'm sorry, 180 degrees. So angle A plus angle B has to be equal to 180, or angle C plus angle D has to be equal to 180. You can also say like angle A and angle D, or angle B and angle C have to add up to be 180, as long as they're the opposites. Like one green, one blue in this case. So those are our angle properties. Now, the line properties say that if they're opposite lines, then they're also equal to each other. So like line AD is equal to line BC, and line CD is equal to line AB. And those ones, there's nothing to do with like the opposite lines, like a red line and a yellow line, because there's nothing that says that the lines have to add up to something, a specific amount. And so we just know that the opposite lines are equal to each other. Okay, with all of that, let's get started on the examples. So the first example says, find the question mark. So the first thing I'm going to do actually is go back up here and decide what these angles have in common with the parallelogram I just drew colors all over. So we have angle A and angle B. We've got to decide if they're equal to each other or if they add up to be 180, because those are the only two options that we have. Well, they are not equal to each other because equal angles would be opposite from each other, and these two angles are not opposites from each other. They're actually like right in line with each other, or right like below each other. And so because they're not equal to each other, we know that they add up to be 180. So I can say angle A plus angle B has to be equal to 180 degrees. Now that I know that, what I can do is replace angle A and angle B with what I know. So angle A is 130 degrees, and angle B is the question mark that I'm looking for. That's equal to 180. Now I can solve that like a normal equation where on each side I would subtract 130 to get the question mark by itself. The 130s cancel out over here. We're left with question mark is equal to 180 minus 130, which is 50. So I know that that angle is 50 degrees. All right, let's look at the next one. So the next one is really similar. This time, instead of finding a question mark, we're solving for x. And again, we have to decide if these two angles are equal to each other or if they add to be 180. So in this case, angle W and angle U are equal to each other because they're opposites from each other, and because they're opposites, then they're equal. So I can write an equation that says U has to be equal, angle U has to be equal to angle W. And then I'm just going to plug in what I know U and W are. So I would say 55, because that's my angle U, is equal to 5x plus 5, because that's my angle W. Now I'm going to solve it like a normal equation for x. So I'm going to draw that line down the middle and then subtract 5 from each side to get the x by itself. The 5's cancel out over here. We're left with 50 is equal to 5x. Then I still want to get x by itself, so I've got to get rid of the 5 that's in front of it. To do that, I'm going to divide each side by 5. The 5's cancel out over here, we're just left with x, and then 50 divided by 5 gives me 10. So I know that x is equal to 10, and that's what I wanted to figure out, so that's my answer. All right, now let's look at the third example. On the third example, it's a line one. So these two lines, line JM and line KL, are opposites of each other, which means that they're equal to each other. So I can write this equation that says JM is equal to KL. Now, what I'm going to do is plug in what I know that JM and KL are. So I'm going to have 2x plus 2 is equal to 4x minus 2. And this question doesn't ask us to solve for x, but in order to figure out what they want us to solve for, which is the line JM, we have to solve for x first. So now I'm going to treat it like a normal equation and solve for x. To solve for x in this one, we want to get the x's on the same side. So to do that, I'm going to subtract 2x from each side. The 2x's cancel out over here. I'm just left with 2. And then 4x minus 2x gives me 2x minus 2. Now I'm going to add this 2 to each side. 2's cancel out over here. We're left with 4 is equal to 2x. And then we're going to divide each side by 2 to get that x by itself. We get x is equal to 2. Now that's not my answer yet because we don't want to just find x, we want to find line JM. But now that I know that x is equal to 2, what I'm going to do is use JM, which is 2x plus 2, and replace the x with what I know, which is 2. So it's going to be 2 times 2 instead of x plus 2, which gives me 6. So my answer is 6. Line JM is equal to 6, which means, and I know it didn't ask us to figure this out, but it also means that line KL is 6 as well. All right, let's look at this last example. In this case, it's asking us to solve for angle E, and I didn't even write down what the angles were. So let me do that first. I'm sorry. So this is angle F, this is angle E, and then C and D. So we want to solve for angle E, but in order to do that, we have to solve for X first. So these two angles are not opposites of each other, which means that they're not equal to each other. Instead, they add to be 180. And so what I'm going to do is write an equation that says angle E plus angle F has to be equal to 180. Then I'm going to replace angle E and angle F with what I know they are. So it's going to be 2x plus 90 plus x plus 90 equals 180. All right, now I'm going to combine like terms on the left side. So I've got a 2x and an x, which gives me 3x. And then 90 and 90 gives me 180. So plus 180 equals 180. Now I can solve this for x. To do that, I would subtract 180 from each side. And what's going to happen is the 180s actually cancel out on both sides. So when it cancels out on the left side, we can just write it as 3x. But when it cancels out on the right side, there's nothing left over on the right side, which means that it's equal to 0. Now I can still solve for that. I'm going to divide each side by 3. But 0 divided by anything is 0, so I just end up with x is equal to 0. That's totally fine. That's a normal answer. And now that I know that x is equal to 0, that's not my answer, but I do want to figure out what angle E is. I know that angle E is 2x plus 90, but now I'm going to replace the x with what I know it is, which is 0. So it's going to be 2 times 0 plus 90, which ends up giving me 90. So I know angle E is 90. And there's my answer. And this is how we deal with angle and line properties of parallelograms.